morning, everybody. Thanks for being here. We decided that we wanted to start at Ox Ridge and just spend about maybe 15 or 20 minutes here to look at how this building is turning out, the different major spaces, the finishes that are in here. Because basically the ed specs that have been created for Hindley Homes and Royal were basically originally created for this building here. And so how the security works, the finishes on ceilings, floors, walls, the lighting, the access to the main office, and we're going to go into a typical classroom. We go into the typical, we'll go into the major common spaces as well, and just look at the finishes in there. So we thought we'd spend maybe 20 minutes here, and then we'll go from here to Royal, and then from Royal to Homes, to Hindley, whichever direction we want to go from there. And spend 20 minutes inside looking at those same spaces, and then 20 minutes outside circling the ground so that you understand sort of what we're looking at from an outdoor point of view in terms of modifications and renovations. And the real purpose of this is that ultimately we have a set of ed specs. We want to confirm that the ed specs are complete, and where there's gaps in those ed specs, we want to refine them so that as we move forward, that we're all on the same page with the plans and the amount of detail and documenting that we're doing, and ultimately the construction that we're doing on each of these campuses. Because most likely, each project has a cap in terms of the amount of money we can spend. We're going to look at that over the course of each phase at the end of schematic design. We're going to have a set of we're going to look at what the cost of the project is at that point, and we're going to prioritize the work that we saw and the work that we're planning, and ultimately determine what we're proceeding forward with from there. And maybe we'll continue to proceed forward with probably a little more than we can afford, and then we'll continue to look and reevaluate and dial back as necessary to meet A, the program goals, and B, the financial expectations of the projects. Okay? Jill, anything else? Words of wisdom?
I think the other thing that we're just looking at is we'll be having a conversation about is, of course, this is a new school, and we're going into our other schools, we're renovating them. So just understanding level of finish and having a conversation about the difference between a renovation and a new school so that we're on the same page as we go into those discussions.
Absolutely, because we have a finite amount of money, and those renovated schools are going to have a lot of great features, but they're still renovated schools. So there's aspects to a renovation that areas that you don't actually won't necessarily be able to fix.
Altered schools. Alterations.
Thank you, Dave.
Not renovated schools.
Thank you. That's right.
So we're starting here in the lobby, and if you look in the lobby, some of the important features, well, first of all, it's air conditioned. We're planning to air condition all Hindley Homes and Royal as well. If you look at the floor finishes, so the floor finishes in the lobby vestibule as well as the lobby are porcelain tile with hard surfaces. You have large walk-off mats. There's a walk-off mat inside the vestibule. There's a walk-off mat in the lobby space as well. Typically, when you're looking at cleaning people's feet when they come in, they have to take at least 3 steps on a walk-off mat before they generally get the stuff off that they're walking in the building with. And so you want to have something fairly large like this to clean your feet before getting into the building. Another feature here is the security window. So that you're coming into a secure vestibule, the second set of doors is typically locked. Sometimes the first set of doors is locked as well. I think that's, it's a district by district discussion, and if, whether you're locking the first set and or the second set, you're locking this. So before somebody can enter into the building proper, they have to check in. In our other schools, we have check-in desks. Those desks typically are in either the vestibule or in the lobby, but it doesn't have the same amount of control when you have, as opposed to something like this.
So this is something we'll be looking at each of the.
We will be looking at this and probably refining the ed specs associated with entrance and security. This also has a direct access to the main office. And so people can go directly from this vestibule once they check in into that main office, as opposed to going to the building. I assume that in the main office there's also a conference room. And so a vendor that comes in may not even have to access the rest of the building because they may just come in here and go into a conference room and then exit back out and not have any contact with the students within the building. What else is nice about this space? Well, it has volume. You know, our lobby and vestibules in our buildings are existing to remain. So whatever volume or size of the space, that's what we have in the future. However, you can see that it has a warm wood ceiling, which adds some warmth to the space. It has some interesting lighting as well. It has a lot of natural light coming in here. And natural light in all of our projects, and especially in the additions that we're looking at, is how to bring natural light in. Natural light it's a sustainable design concept, because if you have a lot of natural light, you really don't even need to have these lights on today, because it's plenty bright enough in here. Okay? So I think we just keep walking through. The next thing will be looking in the hallways, the typical hallway. Now we're in the lobby. Again, the lobby still has the same floor finishes and ceiling finishes. What's nice about this lobby is it's looking out. It's looking out into a courtyard. I think that when we're looking at our additions, do we have opportunities to look to the outside when we're in our common spaces? So this is a nice approach. Being able to see, today it's sunny and hot out. We know that. Moving very quickly into the general hallway, you see that the floor finish has changed. It's no longer a porcelain tile. Now it's, I believe this is a LVT, right?
What is that?
Yep.
What is
Luxury vinyl.
Luxury vinyl.
It's a
Yep.
it's a vinyl product. Whether you're using a VCT or LVT, we're probably looking in those families of materials. You can see on the walls here, all the walls are sheetrock. They're just painted sheetrock. On your other three buildings, the walls typically to a certain height, usually about plus or minus 5 feet, have it's a glazed block, so that it's a harder finish. It's been there like that for 50 years plus. And so you'll find when you have, in a lot of the schools that we design, we actually try to provide something as a strong finish for the first 3, 4, 5 feet to protect the walls. Because over time, people put their feet up against the walls or hands on the wall. And so when it's strictly sheetrock, they will be painted more often. Just a level of detail. Ceilings here, you have drop lane ceilings. They're acoustic ceilings with, I assume these are all LED linear fixtures.
Yeah, it makes sense to have this. He actually made it. What?
To what we're proposing, Ox Ridge has a house plan where there's grade level groupings, and so I'm not sure which grade level grouping this is, but you'll have classrooms around the perimeter here that are all associated with whatever grade it is, and then here there's a commons in the middle, and so it has some lockers. We'll have to discuss how we address lockers or cubbies in the HHR buildings. But this has a lot of space out in the open here that they can use for resource purposes. And so it's a discussion when we're looking at doing our additions, classroom additions, are we creating something similar to this, not necessarily to this scale, but open space in the corridor that acts more than just a corridor, but it's actually educational space. Are there resource rooms right nearby here?
Resource rooms. Yeah, we put the lockers outside the classroom.
What's the space here between the school and the classroom?
It's called a working commons. They all have chairs, tables, and
There's some down here.
the idea was to make sure the lockers were not in the
Right. The Frank?
Yes.
Resource space.
Nice to meet you. Thank you very much.
We're looking at the resource space in there.
You can look in there. It's just a typical resource room. It's smaller than a full-size classroom. And so part of the discussion will be is how large those resource rooms should be, depending on its purpose. And we probably should walk into one of the classrooms.
Yeah, it's kindergarten first, second, and then downstairs is third, fourth, and fifth.
Okay.
So this would be like a kindergarten room.
Room, okay. Wow.
You got a double pane glass for sound. We talked about it in these thresholds, there's a seal, you know, kind of like a quasi acoustical door.
This is a kindergarten classroom,
You know?
but it has to have a bathroom
We're
in it.
not planning to change out doors, so
Yeah, no.
for the most part. Come on in.
It's,
So this is a kindergarten classroom. The only real major difference between the kindergarten and the other grades, the kindergarten rooms tend to be about 100 square feet larger than the first through fifth grade classrooms. Kindergarten tends to be plus or minus 900 square feet, and 1 through 5 is about 800 square feet plus or minus. Kindergarten classrooms also, in this case, have bathrooms within the classroom itself. In our other buildings, they don't have bathrooms within, there's bathrooms in the hallway. Something to look at here, again, the floor finish, similar to the hallways, it's an LVT. And you have drop ceilings here, 2x4 ceilings, which step up in this case. And you can see that there's light shelves at the perimeter. The purpose of that is so that when the light is coming from the west in this case, or south, it's going to bounce it off of that shelf and bounce up to the ceiling to help illuminate the classroom a little bit more. I think the step ceilings is also a similar purpose, and they probably have multiple switching here, so depending on the light level that you want in the room and how natural light is coming in, you can turn on different levels of lighting. So you can just turn on the lighting closest to the hallway or step up along the way.
And the light shelf is the actual shelf in the middle of the window there. And you're saying that
That's
reflects
right.
light.
That's right. It bounces off the upper shelf there.
Okay.
It's a ceiling. In these classrooms, there's also water. In the ed specs, it talks about water in every classroom. So it's really a discussion, is that water in every classroom for grades kindergarten through second grade, or is it including third, fourth, and fifth grade along the way? So there's also discussions in the ed specs about floor finish and having a carpet in classrooms. Now, is that carpet in classrooms for K1 and 2, or is it also in classrooms for 3, 4, and 5? Typically, you don't have carpeting in the upper grades and intermediate school. But that's the kind of level of discussion in the ed specs as we go through that we're just going to want to refine to make sure that we're all in lock and step. Okay. Any other space that we want to look at here?
I'm just you probably noted that for kindergarten, bathrooms have to be part of the
this part's
classroom.
like.
I did
That's right, sorry.
But that's here, and it's not actually going to the room.
But our dollar, so both kids are kindergarten. Okay, so you're.
Big eyes, yeah.
So we've talked about having resource rooms off of the hallways and potentially at the end of hallways. These are a couple of nice examples of resource rooms. These are smaller spaces, but you can see they're large enough to have to teach 4 to 6 to 8 kids in each one. So you should look at sort of the size of these, and there's glass to them so that there's some transparency. And then when you look the other direction, it's nice to see what's going on outside.
Do we know approximately how big those two rooms are?
These?
About 180?
Yeah, about that.
These are, they're the really odd shape, there's more out there in the front, rectangular, and then you can see
Seems like if that would be a phase of graduation.
I think we have a couple different
They had
I don't know if you want to look at the ELPs.
We can walk around.
Oh, is it? Okay.
When they did the actual size of it.
Oh, wow, okay.
Good, how are you? I hate that word, storage room.
Yeah.
And then you got a fire pump,
Yeah, fire pumps.
and that's, I assume that's obviously on the generator as well.
How big is this?
Well, yeah, you only want to put 2 stories, 100 pounds on the street.
Like 38.
That's pretty good.
Yeah, it is.
All right, so here's.
We have a booster pump for the domestic. This is the domestic.
Right.
They do have a booster pump.
The reason we don't have natural gas here is we said, okay, let's do Yankee gas, whatever, Eversource. Look, you got a line coming up at the end of Clark. Bring it right up this road. You can tie in Royal School and do this. Oh no, they wait on some big convoluted. They wanted us to pay $1.5 million.
They had $11 million contract.
So this is the boilers.
Those are hot water
Boilers.
boilers.
This is
Well, construction costs, right?
Yeah.
And then we have
52,
a
54.
fire pump.
Project
I'm
budget.
gonna go look at fire pump.
52 and 11 of it.
Was the plumbing.
Maybe 10.
Then that goes out to the back.
Was also a separate contract.
Yep. More space than really.
Right, I mean,
Unbelievable. This was all, and we're down really low. We're down, what, 20 feet?
from the park, well, the grade of the parking lot is just above us, maybe about a foot above us there.
Okay.
Yeah, correct.
This is about 14 foot ceiling.
Yeah, I think our floor to floors are 14.6, something like that.
Right. We got all this pipes and everything else running out. But as a result, we got room to run all that stuff.
It's a problem for us, unless you want this.
It's the only elementary school right now with their own coats of honor.
Kevin, we need you for door number 2.
Well, they actually have on the inside of one of the hallways, they have some plaques from some
Hot here.
in London.
You know the air conditioning.
Near the window unit's cranking.
And it's like some little official seal. As we go down the hallway, they're on the right hand side.
This works.
Pretty cool in here for no AC.
So ordinarily, someone would be here to greet us, but our administrative staff, this is the application made for this building. The other 2 buildings will be administration with us there.
Great. We'll spend maybe 20 minutes inside and maybe 20 minutes walking around the outside. But this is really, we saw Ox Ridge, we saw the finishes, we saw how they were addressing security in their building. So in Royal, our floor here is a VCT floor, and it has walk-off mats that are just roll down, walk-off mat. There's actually no I'm sorry, there's also a walk-off mat in the vestibule as well. But the way that security works here is that you have to be buzzed in at both of these doors, as you can see. But you see that there's no main office right adjacent to us. Our main office is right around the corner here. It's not far from this entrance, but in this case, the check-in booth is directly in front. And so this is the security station right here. So if somebody is at that door, they get buzzed in. They get buzzed in prior to actually seeing who they are, potentially. And so, you know, that's one thing when you're looking at security building that
You want to enclose them in a booth?
well, you want to think about how you address security in the building. And at Ox Ridge, you have a secure vestibule with.
No, I'm doing this in all my buildings. We're putting man traps in and putting people in bulletproof booths. It's not fun.
I'm not sure what kind of glass you have there. I understand that it has a film on it.
So you know what, we often don't talk about that on camera. We often do that in executive session.
I'm sorry.
But that's okay. But the glass is.
But maybe we should say, you know, please don't include that.
But yeah, we can talk in exec session about exactly how we handle it.
So one thought here is we have 5 classrooms down here. 3 of them are kindergarten, one's in art, and one's a special education room. We're planning to have 4 kindergarten rooms down at this end. We could convert the 5th one, which is right here, as an option into the main office. And you could have a transaction window, you could have your direct access to the main office right from the entrance vestibule. And then we could convert the main office into staff lounge space, etc.
Is the idea then to extend the second wall?
You could extend the vestibule out to this point, for example, and do it that way. So, yeah, is that part of the ed specs? Is something that we need to discuss and sort of refine, and maybe that's included, and maybe it's not. Maybe it's part of a future project. But I think that it's important as we look at these buildings, look at them with fresh eyes, and look at them in relationship to what you just accomplished in a brand new building. So, lighting, you look at the ceilings here, you look at the walls here versus the walls in the other building, just for a comparison's sake. I think we should probably go down, actually, let's first go down this hallway briefly, because this is part of the 90s edition. And so the 90s edition, you can see that the hallways are fairly clean, that we do have block walls. They're painted black. These are very durable.
How are you? Hello.
Your facility staff, which does a beautiful job of cleaning the floors. I saw them the other day. So what, everybody, can everybody come in here for a second? So this is a typical example of the additions that you put in the 1990s, where there's a VCT flooring. The flooring typically is in good condition. You have casework in the classrooms that typically in pretty good condition. You have 2x4 ceilings, and some of the classrooms I think have LED fixtures, and some of them have the old fluorescents. So if there was one sort of aspect to these classrooms that you may want to consider, it's the replacement of ceilings and lighting. And we could either do that as part of this project, or we could talk about other opportunities to do a ceiling and lighting replacement project.
We do have lighting though, as part of this though. At least moving to LED.
Wherever it's fluorescent, you have over the course of the last several years changed out some of your lighting from fluorescent or incandescent to LED. It's not complete. It's something in the range of 30 to 40% has been changed out. And so we're currently in the process of documenting what has been and what hasn't been changed out. And we can go from there.
The caveat there, though, is some of them is just lamping, not
Right,
fixtures.
not the actual fixture.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So
We want to change these fixtures.
the hallway, again, similar to the classroom, it's fairly clean. What a typical 2x4 or 2x2 lay-in ceiling does is it conceals all the ductwork, all the piping. You can see that there's sprinkler heads in the ceiling. It's all concealed behind the grid that you see out there. When we go into the 1950s wing, you'll see that all that piping is exposed.
In a classroom like this, Eric, where we're going to be doing HVAC, because we're doing it everywhere, what typically happens to the ceiling?
So most of the duct work for ventilation, et cetera, is happening in the hallways.
Okay.
So the hallway ceilings are definitely coming down, ceilings and light are coming down,
Right.
and that duct work's going in there. Most of the classrooms has to do with the perimeter heating system, the fin tube that's on the perimeter, and the unit ventilators here that get removed. And in most of your buildings, you don't have casework built into the exterior walls, and so this could be a very clean removal and replacement. And same thing with the perimeter fin tube radiation. But I think we should, at a committee level, discuss, okay, here's a classroom, what level of finish or what options should we consider updating? We do in our budget, David's here, have a certain amount of money, depending on the area, to do renovations in the entire school. We may want to do more in some areas and less in others, and that's expected.
Yes.
So in a classroom like this, there's no reason to change the floor out. There's no reason to change the gaze work out. So, and we can paint the walls, and we maybe do a ceiling and lighting project in here, and this room is done.
Eric, when we did put those conceptual estimates together, we had in some of that, even that light alteration scope, we had figured on ceilings being replaced just because of not knowing system-wise. We figured by the time we maybe take portions down or something. So I think we're, like you said, we leave in these rooms a lot of the skeleton the same way, but I don't necessarily think we're bound to keep the ceilings from a budget standpoint. I think as long as we, keep that minimal.
I don't think we've done the study yet, but in the 1990s wing, typically the sinks and the casework around the sinks is in pretty good shape still. We need to look at it in the 50s wings, whether that's still in the same condition.
I'll just point out here that in a kindergarten room, just to point it out, there's no shared bathroom here, right? Where the other rooms for kindergartens, we have the bathroom, the ELP will all be over there, so they have them, but it's just to point that out.
Thank you.
Good point.
And if we had to build it, I think if we have to build a new building, we would have to have them, I think.
Correct.
Right?
There's bathrooms down the
Right.
hall,
Yes.
but then they're not included within the classroom. So, and the kindergarten first grade has to be on the first floor. So in all of our buildings, at least those two grades are on the first floor. In some cases, the second grade is also on the first floor. So again, a very clean hallway, very durable walls. The floor is in good condition. So in these hallways right here, probably the only modification has to do with taking down the ceilings to do the mechanical work, and so doing ceilings and lighting work.
I'm not sure if it's looking around, so it should be.
Yeah. You start to see. I don't see what these are here. This is up higher, but the steps down. So you might want to do it.
They might be on the MEP perspective.
This is one of the ones that's not really used, like,
Yeah,
for kids or anything.
I was gonna say it looks like a teacher lounge.
Over here, please.
Yeah. So I wanted to capture the same standard. downtown.
Glad you know.
So this is a good point to look at a lot of different finishes and how the building was built. So again, on the floor here, you can see that there's VCT flooring in the hallways, as well as in the stairwell, as well as in the classrooms adjacent. There's actually, it's a different type of VCT on the ramp that gives you a little bit of additional traction. You can see on the walls here that it's a glazed block on the walls that's very durable. And then you can see on the ceilings here, we also have a 2x4 grid with lighting, but you can see the sprinkler piping on both sides. And that's for fire suppression. And in some places it crosses the ceiling and it's dropped. And there's a lot of other things on the walls that you can see, different fire protection apparatus. In the stairwells, again, similar to the hallways here, it's all glazed block. It's very durable, it's in good condition. There's no real reason to change it out. At some point, you may want to look at changing out the floor finishes and perhaps the treads, but otherwise, and look at the lighting, but otherwise, it's in good shape.
You talked a little bit about the fire system in our last conceptual design meeting. Can you talk a little bit more while we're standing here?
Well, I think we need to look at it with our engineers as to what the best approach would be, as to whether or not we want to raise it up into the ceiling or leave it here and create soffits and leave it in place. If you leave it in place, there are conditions. Well, there is one head there that you can see. And there's a head exposed right here. So there's modifications that would have to be made so that those heads continue to provide the coverage in the hallway that they need to provide. And if you go down the hallway, you will see somewhere there's, well, here's a good example right here. It's dropped because there's a head that's in this closet right here. And so wherever there's an individual space, they've dropped them this way, and then there's other places where the main goes into the classroom, like right there. That's showing the main going directly into the classroom.
This is probably a gate.
I believe this was
We don't use
original
anymore, but
entrance.
it's old buildings, you see it a lot, but it creates egress hazards.
So this was, we believe, the original entrance to the building. There was 2 classrooms to the right and 2 classrooms to the left, and you came right in through the entrance door here. Obviously, back in the 1970s, when SMS architects got involved, they added this library. It's a nice location for the library, as in it's very centrally located. But then when the 1990s addition was constructed, that library and that addition are awfully close to each other. So the plan here is actually to demolish the library, take this ramp and flatten the floor, most likely reutilize this nice big wide opening as an entrance to the new library, and the new library actually spans the majority of this hallway, as well as it, extending out into the courtyard beyond, or whatever we're going to call that space.
Outdoor lunch.
I think we probably should look at the commons down here, just because we had that discussion about light and natural light.
Yeah.
Yes.
And then we can go outside, just start from the back. Wow. Then we're edging out.
Oh, okay.
Same gym, you guys ever after? I was a student, I went to K through 3. And then I was
So this is a typical gym. The gym looks pretty similar on all 3 campuses. I believe these lights were changed out in recent years. Kevin's not here, but maybe Kevin can confirm that.
They were maybe
So,
last.
so these lights were all changed out recently.
In oil or done half, Jim.
I think all three schools, the gym has this type of lighting, so this light was changed out in the last several years, and those are LED. So there's not much that we'd be planning to do here. It could be really just a paint job, if anything. And that can be part of our budget or part of an annual budget. But the gyms are in their existing addition. There's no real plan to make any significant modifications. But I guess one comment would be here. Look at where you're getting your natural light from. That's facing north. Most of the light coming in here is either on the south side here. You can actually even see that there's blinds that come down to shade some of the direct sunlight. But this northern light is awesome because most of the school year, the sun is not coming in on that side, but it makes it nice and bright. The lights aren't on in here, and we're perfectly comfortable in this space as it is. And so it's important to look at as we go across the hall, because when we're looking at the different options, one of the options was to put the hallway space on both sides, which would block some of this great natural light into that space.
Yeah,
we are.
they were from Parliament, I think.
It was a royal experience. So if you didn't notice, when we went from the main hallway here, we actually went down about 4 feet. And so that's important when we're looking at this room right here, because there's a new corridor that's planned that's coming right across Jameson there, basically at the windowsill height. That's a new floor that leads to the first grade, and then on the second level to the second grade wing of your house. And so the windows on this side will need to be modified or eliminated depending on our discussions. We could have higher windows that look into the hallway there, and that might be nice. This hallway, actually, on the other side is primarily going to be glazed, looking into the courtyard. So the amount of light that could continue to come in here would be relatively significant. So it might be a good idea to keep some amount of light there. This set of doors right here is planned to be removed because, again, the floor is going to be 4 feet higher. And we're going to be looking at exiting calculations. But that set of doors, as well as these sets of doors here for the size of the room this is, we believe is going to be fine. And that set of doors is actually redundant and not required from a code egress point of view. But again, on the north side here, there's a lot of beautiful natural light that's coming in. And so the thought here is, if we go with the option where we're basically either taking down or significantly renovating the first grade wing into a music and art center, that leaving it in that footprint, you get all this beautiful natural light coming into the space. Again, the lights aren't on. The lights don't need to be on in this room. Here you can see those stairs. So our corridor is going to, the connection is going to have to be just beyond those stairs, basically where that white corridor is.
Hey, buddy.
Cutting them through.
What does the drop off look like 29 a year?
That stays. We're still going to have that staircase. It doesn't change. And all this equipment right here. So, don't get rid of those. Do we have any mechanical people here? Team? Come on. So this area right here doesn't look that significant, but it's where all the main electric service comes in. All three of these closets are electric rooms. The proposal, when we bring new service in, on all three of these buildings, we actually have to build a new electric room, or take an existing space of plus or minus 200 square feet for into the new electric service, because we're increasing the service because we're going to air condition the entire building. And so in this case, just behind this door right here will be an electric room, which will be a new construction piece. And we're actually proposing to take the generator that's out on this side and potentially put it right next to that electric room on that side. But the way that the incoming service is coming in here, it really behooves us to leave it here to save money in that respect. And then from where Chris is right here and Sean beyond, this is the area where we're looking at today, and we will be estimating with David and David's team as to what the best way is to either renovate this in place or to take it down to its foundations and reconstruct it. It's in a good place. Again, music wants to be somewhere adjacent to the commons. This has a nice connection. And music is also a nice thing to have a little bit away from the rest of the classrooms because of the noise that gets created in the spaces. I think at this point we probably could just walk outside here and talk a little bit about the courtyard. Actually, you know what? Let's walk out this way, and then we'll walk around this way and back to the parking lot. So our understanding as to how the outside of this building is used is that this side, the west side of the building, is where the primary use is for the recess. Because we have the cafeteria on this side of the building. Exiting the cafeteria, there's a nice wooded area which we'll look at as we turn the corner here. But we have this nice big playground and the playground equipment, etc. There's some grass over there. So this is the area that really should be maintained for recess purposes. So when we're looking at hardscape, meaning asphalt areas, I think over the years, every school looks at, okay, what are we going to do in this area? Well, let's just pave it. And so I think we need to reevaluate which areas should be paved and which areas can either be restored back to grass or some other purpose. Actually, come right around the corner right here.
How are you?
So if I have to stand in the sun, our cafeteria is right there. Our exits from the cafeteria right adjacent. The kids come out here. This is a great resource right here at the south area. Sometimes it's shaded. One aspect of it is there's also vehicles that come around here. This area here, it may behoove us to look at creating maybe 2 levels of block like we have at Ox Ridge in the courtyard there. There's a sort of the sculptural rocks that define this area, define an area which is truly for kids and not for traffic. Because you also have 2 dumpsters that are right along the street there. One of the thoughts was actually to relocate the dumpsters to this pad right here and enclose them in a pad and fence around it. And that would get them away from, and that's where everybody drops off and picks up during the day, gets it away from the kids and brings it back here.
They actually have their graduation right here now, with the shade.
That's great.
Right, so,
Great room.
you know, you get a large group of people out here. All right, can you point out? Okay, all right, okay. Fair enough.
So I'm very.
Nice. I never reverse the insurance. No way. I'm walking around for 3 hours in the sun. Where kindergarten classrooms now are all the way where we first started,
Yes.
right?
So the other end. Typically when you're designing something in kindergarten, you play space. Ideally, you want it to be like a motel, where you go straight out a door into an enclosed play area. And then right back. So, you see the beautiful modulars that, take some pictures of the modulars because they won't be here in 3 years. Hopefully they're not here in 2 years.
Just design reference, your guys' recommended option is basically keep the same footprint.
Same footprint, yes.
Extend it out.
Because, again, this side of the building is where most recess happens. And when we were even talking last week about homes and how homes had sort of broken up into two sides, it was very difficult to monitor during recess. You really want to have a large enough recess space in one area that's visible for the staff that's out supervising.
Like Hanley House.
So in the future, from the doorway all the way out here, this is open space. So what is this? Does this become more playground? Does it become asphalt? Or does it become grass or something for, and if the art room's at the end here, you create a courtyard out here and it's an outdoor area where kids can paint and draw. Not a day like today, but it's 70.
Or shade.
What's the process to
close out some of these, like the process where we're mentioning things like it'd be iterative, like the process probably, what's the process to close these issues? I think so. When your importance or.
So I think first we want to look at those ed specs, and we want to go through each section and try to kind of give everybody a place to start. I think we should go through section by section as to what our goals and intent are for that section. And then, for example, on the outside here, I think we will develop 2 or 3 different approaches to how to, once we have what we know what we want for ed spec, from the ed specs. Okay, we want a basketball court out here. Well, let's find a good location to put that basketball court. Or we need 3 different age group playground spaces. So do we already have those? Are those in the right spot? When, for example, at Hindley, where we're putting an addition, that starts to infringe on where there's an existing basketball court. So are we going to recreate that basketball court a little bit farther? That's part of the discussion.
That's where Jamison learned to race. He had That's how we all started.
Mine has a loop in it.
Yeah. And it sounds like a lot like this exercise.
All right, so So this is a good place to pause as well. So this is all paved. It looks like at one point it was 4 square. Some areas over here look like at one point they were parking spaces. How are we using this space today? And how do we want to use it in the future? If most of the recess is on the other side of the building, what is this for? Do we want to put a basketball court out here? Do we want to enlarge our garden space? If this is music, do we want to have an outdoor area where kids can play the tuba and annoy the neighbors? Make sure that's on there.
Yeah. There's trouble there.
I've been directly ordered to stay away from it.
That's what I'm
I try to toe the line at times. Okay, so this is the footprint of where the proposed first and second grade wing is. It actually extends out to about here, but it stays off of the rugby field. And this addition on both levels has 4 classrooms, has resource space, has toilet room space, and has some storage space. And then if you look over to your, behind you, this is the library. This library is proposed to be taken down. And those renderings that you've seen in the past, this is the area over here that we're looking at to create that outdoor learning space.
So given the heavy use of the field here, I'm thinking landscaping between the end of the building and the field will be pretty important. Yep.
The classrooms actually look north and south, so they don't look towards the east.
Okay.
So there isn't a whole lot of glass on that side,
Okay.
except for where the stair is. There's a stair at the end that's interconnecting between the first and second floor as well as exiting.
Okay.
There is some grade change here, and we'll be working on the grades. You can see that from the commons, that the commons is quite low. So from first grade, it's actually ramps down. When they built this, I think they probably modified the grades just to work with egress in and out of the building. One thing that needs to be maintained is this access road. This is basic service for the building, and so all maintenance that comes and goes utilizes this roadway. And it does infringe a little bit on the field, but there isn't a whole lot we can do about that. So there isn't a plan to significantly modify that.
So if the addition comes out, what happens to this access road?
It'll continue, it'll just be on the outside of the building. But there's still enough space there so it doesn't infringe on the field or the spectator area adjacent to the field. And all that will be worked out in our site plans. Looking more closely at the site plans. Okay, at this point, unless people want to look in the slot between the buildings here, I think, Jill, should we go to
I think so, but that's what you're talking about when the 1993 came on, right?
No, I meant like
quartered.
Yeah. So, all right. So typically, there's a 30-foot minimum clear space between a classroom windows, and an adjacent building. Obviously, when this was done, this is closer to 7 feet than 30 feet. So this is one of the aspects of this design that we're correcting as a part of this project. All right, Homes. So we'll all drive down to Homes and meet there.
Yeah, we can.
Sir?
How are you?
Good, how are you?
Peachy.
Yeah? So here we are at Holmes. At Holmes, we're looking to expand in terms of parking. There's some opportunity to potentially utilize the space right here in the parking lot to gain an additional probably 6 parking spaces. We have some nice mature trees along the fence right here. We're also, and then this is referred to as, partially referred to as the old Curtis property. And it pitches down. There's actually an existing driveway from the original property that was there. On the other side of this white fence, we're looking at adding somewhere in the range of 15 to 20 parking spaces there. Have not spoken to David and O&G about this yet, but we are looking at phasing. And one thing that we want to look at a little bit more closely is actually having the construction and the construction vehicles come in from this side as opposed to the other side.
Right, 'cause that's really tight over there.
Well,
right?
the challenge
crossing
is
of with students.
Paul and her team are going to be trying to teach these students and have outdoor recess, and we don't want our construction vehicles anywhere near them. And so if we can create a construction access point as well as perhaps an earth ramp or a ramp back up to the back side here, we might be able to do this addition from this side as opposed to from the other side.
It's just a couple lines on paper, right? It's not a big deal.
Well, it's just a couple of elevations and grade contours that we're working on.
Right, I do see things dropping
It does
off there.
step down here. So this area right here is where we're proposing to add the music suite. So there's 2 music rooms back here as well as storage for the music department and for the cafeteria stage. And then proposing a new corridor which leads to where the entrance canopy is at the far end there, as well as creating a new entrance vestibule. Because when we go into the lobby, you'll see that there is a man trap in there. That's a glass man trap that's actually in the lobby space that really condenses the size of the lobby. We're trying to pull that out so that we can create a more generous lobby, especially if you have any sort of event in the cafeteria. You sometimes need breakout space in the lobby. You'll have that as well as this corridor to use when you have some sort of event that's happening in the cafeteria.
All right, what does that light look like with the light from the hallway? How does that?
So you can see you have some nice big windows into the cafeteria now. Directly opposite from the hallway there's going to be a series of columns or piers that are masonry piers, but large sections of glass on the corridor looking out to the front entrance here. So you're going to get plenty of natural daylight that's borrowed through the hallway into there. We're also going to do a light study on that. If we decide that it would even be better if we added a skylight in the cafeteria, maybe we'd look at something like that to bring some more natural light.
Great.
It'll be all part of the plan.
Can I also ask about the parking down there? Would there be the opportunity to also have a cut at that end to make a big loop?
So that's what we're looking at.
Okay.
Is we're looking at having one-way traffic so that you'd enter at the far end and just be single lane coming through here and then exiting back out basically where this is here.
Super.
There is a generator right here. That generator is planned to be just shifted down the hill a little bit, but continue to be maintained.
Yeah, might as well fill in.
We have to go to the town, ask to incorporate it and as part of the home.
But can we take this and basically just do a diagonal axis back behind the diagonal? Yeah.
Okay, so similar to Royal, this is Homes. You can see what we have for floor finish. Similar to Royal, the floor finish is a VCT. We have walk-off mats as well. Somewhat dissimilar to Royal, where Royal did have a little bit of a vestibule. This building doesn't have a vestibule for energy code reasons. We really want to have a vestibule, and as well as, you installed this several years ago as a man or people frame, and you have direct access to a reception desk right there, or a security desk. So this, in our plans, that vestibule there shifts outside the building and creates a new vestibule out there. And we're actually looking at the first window on the outside here as the security office, so that you could have check-in directly and have a transaction window directly from that office into that vestibule. And then that can open this up a bit so that this could be a more elegant entrance to the building.
If you put a security desk there, do you lose that classroom?
So we're going to be talking about musical chairs and classrooms, and ultimately, we're looking. Part of this tour is to discuss to help refine our ed specs, and then we're going to want to make sure that we have a list of all the offices and all the resource spaces that are needed, and we're going to make sure that when we go from phase to phase to phase, existing to during construction to post-construction, that we have accounted for all those spaces so that people have homes throughout the process.
Homes
We might just want to walk into the cafeteria here briefly since we're here. So interesting, we're talking about natural lighting here, but look at the blinds. All the blinds are pulled because of the heat. So actually, it will help in terms of heat because you won't have as much of the direct sunlight coming in, but you'll still have plenty of borrowed light because your windows are only 8 feet beyond.
And we'll just keep these windows, right?
Yes, these windows are planned to stay. The stage is planned to stay. We'll have to talk about connection between the stage and the music suite beyond, whether we continue to use this set of double doors or whether we try to create another access point. I mean, this stage is set up 12 or 14 inches or something like that, so you have to be a little bit careful when you're doing that because the hallway beyond will be lower.
Okay.
You can also look right here while we're here, and we have 2 music modules. Our music program is currently taught in those 2 classrooms out there. During construction, we're planning to maintain one of those and take the rest of the program and potentially utilize this room or another space within the building to be determined. So,
Is there a reason we can't keep both of them? Because this is used for 2/3 of the day.
So
for lunch.
we're going to have to talk, but actually the second modular would be in the way of the proposed addition, and so that's part of the challenge. Well, potentially they could be moved, and I think it could also be part of the discussion is taking those 2 modulars, and maybe we want to move both of them somewhere else on campus. Maybe we move them to the playing field for a period of time. So that will all be part of the discussion, and obviously part of the financial decisions that have to be made, because moving them will have the cost associated with shipping. Okay, so I think we should probably look at the typical hallways and typical classroom. You saw the different phasing and it's going to be good for you to this is the type of document that we're putting together as we go and refine it and say, okay, that's the construction area. No, we need more space. We need less. How we're putting staging, all that stuff. It's going to get added on to this.
Right, I think that's where it is. This is so outside of the someone that's what you've done.
design. No one said anything about design. What?
Actually, that just worked out good.
Okay. Well, that was a mistake.
All right, so this is a good point to stop again.
This is not a typical classroom because it has the.
That's another reason for showing it.
Okay.
So look at the floor finish. We have VCT on the floors, similar to Royal. Then the 1990s editions were done in black, and so there's good sturdy wall surface. Similar to Royal again, all the mechanicals are most likely going to be, trunks are going to go through the hallways here, so we're going to be taking down the ceilings and lighting, putting the new ductwork in, and then putting the ceilings and lighting back. If you look into a typical classroom, it's similar finishes. The classroom floors, as well as the hallway floors, are in good condition. The walls are in good condition. The casework in the classrooms are generally in good condition. And so, once again, similar to what we had the discussion in Royal, you know what? We did not look in a class, in the 50s wing classroom in Royal. We missed that. When we go to Hindley, the Hindley 50s classrooms look very similar to the Royal 50s classrooms, so let's point it out there and make sure that we look at those. So, typical here again, you're not.
Wreck in the place.
You break it, you buy it. Break it in the school.
Wreck in the place.
The casework was in good condition. Ceilings and lighting. So again, some of these classrooms probably already had LED replacement fixtures, others have not. We're doing a survey as to which ones. We may need to, depending on how the ductwork runs, go from the corridors into the classrooms. We may be making some modifications to the ceilings. That's still to be determined. You can see along the perimeter here, you have a unit ventilator that's creating heat and air conditioning. There's a window unit there. The window units, wherever we see window units, are being removed. They are not going back in. There will be a central air conditioning. There will be an air conditioning system throughout. And again, there's no casework along the perimeter walls here that would potentially be affected by any sort of mechanical changes. It's all furniture. If you look across the hallway here, people gonna come in?
We lost some people.
We lost
Transport.
almost everybody that's important to be here.
I think Jill and Dr. Adley are talking about some. Jill.
So we just want to point out one aspect in this classroom, because it happens in this classroom at home, and it happens in one of the first grade classrooms in Hindley. And that is the central data closet for the entire building is in the corner of this classroom. So it takes up somewhere in the range of an 8 by 8 or 10 by 10 section of the classroom. So in this particular classroom, it's not the 800 plus square feet that we have in every other classroom. If we are planning to go from Cat 3 data cabling to Cat 6, for example, this may be an opportunity for us to either eliminate or reduce the size of these data closets, not eliminate them, relocate them to a different place. But there's an awful lot of service that still comes in here. I think your telephone comes in here. I think your security systems come in here. I'm not sure if there's anything else. So we may still need to have a closet, but it might be able to be reduced significantly and relocate the data systems to a different part of the building. And that will be part of the technology discussions that we have. And ideally, it wouldn't be here. Ideally, it would be somewhere else so that all the classrooms are all the same size. So let's go to the original part of the building and look there for a second.
This is where they learn networking.
Yeah.
You could teach them.
The hacking class.
typical bathroom. The bathrooms over the years have been well maintained. Some of the finishes have been upgraded over the time. I think from a case-by-case basis, we may want to discuss whether there's additional upgrades that are needed or whether the bathrooms are just fine. When you start looking at bathrooms, you're also looking at energy efficiency and water usage. So, are these low-flow fixtures? Right here, you can see the sinks are manual. Do we want to have fixtures that have automatic shut-offs? Do you want to have toilets that automatically flush? Things like that. Do you want our toilets low-flow toilets, or are they providing a lot of water usage? So those are all discussions that I think at a committee level we probably should continue.
So they're not technically part of our scope, but there may be bathrooms that we encounter where we need to understand what we're doing with bathrooms.
That's right. So this is a key point. Team? So this is a key location in this building, because we've just come from the lobby, we've turned the corner, we're coming up towards the original building, and this would be a wonderful, right on the other side of this wall is where the Library Learning Commons is. But to get to the Library Learning Commons, there's a little side door here, or there's, I think, the main door, which is a single door around the corner. This would be a great place to open this up, make this glass, show that this Library Learning Commons is a really prominent and important part of this building, and that you can enter directly into it. We're also looking at egress patterns and whether or not this egress is required. If it's not required, this will also be planned to be infilled and utilized as part of the Learning Commons, and have an exit from that Learning Commons directly to that outdoor area that we've talked about as an outdoor learning space and garden. Now we're entering into the original part of the building. You can see the floor finishes have changed. We have a glazed tile on the walls that goes up to about 4 feet. And we have a terrazzo tile on the floor. This terrazzo tile will be here and look like this in another 100 years. I think it's 100 years old. It's close to it.
1930 was the building.
30, so all right, so it's 92 years old. And the floor, if you look at it, its condition, it looks like it's in pristine condition pretty much. That's the beauty of terrazzo. This is the beauty of walls like this, that these glazed tiles are in great shape and will remain in great shape for many years to come. And so when we're looking at hallways, for example, we are looking at trying to do things that are durable for a long term. Because up above here, you can see that these are either plaster or sheetrock walls. They're painted, and you don't have to paint them that often because they don't get scuffed, because it's above the area which typically would get scuffed.
Let's do this. Sure.
Yes. So unlike Royal and unlike Henley, the ceilings in the original building here are very high, and the sprinkler heads are all above the ceiling. So you can see these little circles up there. That's where the sprinkler pipes are directly above there. And we have plenty of height here, and so this, we don't have to address the aesthetics in a room like this. That are great. Again, we most likely will be taking down these ceilings and putting them back up for mechanical systems.
You say putting them back up, you mean as is? What do you mean by that?
No, they're going to be replaced. So it'll be a new ceiling grid. It'll be a new. We prefer using 2x2 grids as opposed to 2x4s. Because sometimes with 2x4s over time, if there's a lot of humidity in the air, they tend to sag. So a 2x2 is just a little bit of a stronger grid. It's preference, but typically the way that's our recommendation.
2x4s are perfectly fine. Is there, I guess the only classrooms would be upstairs that we can look at in the original building here?
Yeah.
So let's look at one classroom upstairs,
Go for
and
the
then I
library.
think we'll go out back. So when we go back downstairs, we may want to just poke our head into the existing library. But you can see that access doorway up there is directly over the library. And so the library ceiling is somewhere in this range right here. And access above is up there. So we talked about potentially infilling some area up here for either educational or for mechanical systems. We're looking at the structure above. The structure is very deep. It's something like 7 foot deep trusses. And ultimately, we would like the floor for the mechanical room to be at this level. It might even be a step down, depending on the amount of height that we need and the existing structure that's up there. But it will be providing a new floor finish in the back portion of the library to create that space.
And you enter from either this side or this side, right?
What's that?
The mechanical room. Whatever
It's to be determined wherever the best location is for access and maintenance.
I'm just stating the obvious here that in terms of, you can't tell because custodians are doing their work, so you can't tell what's normally in a hallway and what's not. But in all of these older buildings, we got to get everything out of the hallways because it's a hazard and it's also just part of the project.
It's part of the summer.
Yeah.
During the school year, there's nothing in the hallways. In the summer months, when the maintenance department facilities are doing the cleaning in the different classrooms, they're stripping and re-waxing
Oh no, I'm
the
saying
floors.
during the school year, there's stuff in the hallways.
Yeah.
Right? So let's just.
He's talking storage.
I'm talking
He's
copiers,
looking for- he's
storage,
looking for more
everything.
space.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's all.
Yeah.
This classroom right here?
Sure. Or the art room, I don't know if we should shut it down.
It's got both.
Steam heat and then they get water from
All right, so this is just another example. The floors are in great shape. The casework is fine. The walls are fine. You have nice big windows here. The drop ceiling is the one place in these typical classrooms in the older portions of the buildings that we may want to take the ceilings down and replace the ceiling grid and lighting, especially if the lighting is not LED. And that would be the portion of the renovation financial part of the project that we have to do some renovation.
They're dropped because there's probably ductwork in them now?
This is
Why
dropped?
are they
Yeah.
dropped?
Well, originally it was plaster ceiling, so you can actually see it's plaster there. But you can see that there's sprinkler heads, so there's sprinkler piping up there.
Okay.
There's wiring for the different mechanisms, the fire alarm, etc. And then these light fixtures themselves tend to need, especially if they're fluorescent, they tend to need about 8 to 10 inches. The unit itself is probably 4, and then you need some space above it. The new LED fixtures that come out are, you can get them where they're an inch or an inch and a half deep. So you almost need no space above. You just need enough to jog them around. And if there's sprinkler heads in the ceiling, obviously you need enough space to get the sprinkler heads in. All right, so let's look at the library, and then we'll walk out the back door into the outdoor learning area.
I mean, I don't have that fingertip.
Yeah.
So this is where
So this is a beautiful tall volume space. I believe originally it was part of the auditorium of this building. And then it was converted to a gym on the other side and the library on this side. I understand, and we will need to study it a little bit. When people are bouncing balls in the gym, there's a lot of noise that comes through.
The floor connects.
And so we may want to create a break between the floors. And we'll have to look at how to best accomplish that so that you're not getting that noise or vibration coming from one side to the other.
That's one of our biggest issues in terms of the instruction. It's really
Noise level between the two. Is it coming through the walls, or is it mostly the vibration on the floors?
it's hard to tell, but
No.
you can definitely come when school's in session at any time and you can hear.
Good. So when we were upstairs, we talked about a mechanical mezzanine. So the back portion of this room is the plan where we would be able to do something like that. And it will be needed related to the mechanical systems that are being proposed in the building. The balances can continue to have ceilings that are this tall.
Would you ever consider an architectural mezzanine, some sort of like nice staircase with another set of books or like a loft kind of thought? You could say no, I'm just asking. It's such a great, you've got so much space.
We hadn't considered it, but there's lots of opportunities in here. So we can look at multiple ways to have. And the plan is, once we get into the actual learning commons discussions, is we will be laying them out a few different ways and having those discussions as to how best to do it so that they're consistent in terms of the programs that are being taught in the 3 different learning commons, not necessarily the way that they're designed or laid out. This has great natural light looking out to the ball field and playground in the back there. We're planning to expand. So this library right here is about, when you exclude the special ed room here, it's about 2,500 square feet. So it's smaller than what the ed specs say. The ed specs talk about a minimum of 3,000 square feet. And we're actually looking at each building being closer to 3,300 to 3,400 square feet in each. And so to achieve that in here, obviously this classroom becomes part of the library space, learning commons space, as well as we're planning to expand this out several feet so that it has sort of a window box approach out to the outdoor learning commons area.
When you expand out, will it be the same height?
It's actually going to step down. So you'll end up having clerestory windows above and then open. It's the rhythm here is going to be maintained. And so some of the beauty of the space is sort of the rhythm, the way that the original was constructed. We want to maintain that, while at the same time provide that additional space that we want.
Eric, just for the purposes of, to remind the committee and anybody who might watch the video, some of the questions, of course, we ask are about design and what's it going to look like. Will you just remind us of where we are in the process and what we have decided and what we haven't?
Sure. So we've really been involved in this process for about a month and a half now, and it's truly at the conceptual level that we have, at this point, finalized the conceptual design, which basically we know where the different parts and program elements are going, but not how the program elements will actually be laid out, detailed, and specified. So we go through a multi-phase process of design. And the phase that we've just entered into is schematic design, which at the end of schematic design, every space will be identified. We'll know the size of it. We'll know the adjacencies. We'll generally know how they're being used. In a space like the learning commons, we're going to go to a greater level of detail early. And so probably a space like this will almost get into a design development level, which means that we'll know how many students are in here, where the bookcases are going to go, where the librarian's office and circulation desk will be, makerspace areas where presentations would happen in this room, where there's reading nooks, and we'll be doing multiple options for a space like this. The typical classrooms, etc., at the end of schematics, what we put together is an outline set of specifications. So we know generally what the floor finishes, what the wall finishes, what the ceilings and lighting are, so that when O&G and our cost estimators get together and start to estimate, they're not just doing square foot estimates, but they can do real takeoffs, so that at the end of each phase, at the end of schematic design, and again at the end of design development, we can get fairly specific cost estimates, which as you go along become even more specific, so that when we ultimately go out to bid, that we have a level of confidence that we'll be able to accomplish what we're trying to accomplish. Regardless, when we get to the point of bidding out a project, we're going to have a certain percentage of the design that will be considered ad alternates. We have a base project, and alternates mean stuff that's important, but it doesn't elevate to the same level of priority. And if the budgets come in and the bids come in well, and we can afford to do those, we do them. And if we don't, you at least have that information, you know what it costs, and you can make decisions later on as to whether and if and when you could do those additional pieces of the puzzle. We can walk right out here. Everything else that you're masonry building, this isn't masonry. So when we're proposing to build this out, we're going to be lifting out something in such a way that it's more respectful to the original architecture. And this is that vestibule right here that we're talking about infilling at both levels. The upper level, it might be a resource room. And at this level, it can be one of those reading nooks that we've talked about. And this could be the exit point from the library, so that we have 3 bays here of reading area, reading nooks. We can look onto this. Now this area right now is all paved, it's asphalt. It serves the school really well. And for recess, we'd like to create 2 different types of outdoor spaces out in this area. Obviously the recess asphalt that's beyond, we want to maintain. But the area between these 2 wings right here, we would like to look at from a landscape architecture point of view, is to augmenting them so that this creates outdoor space, which can be used as recess space, but also going to be used for educational purposes. And is more green. We talked about it when we were at Royal, maybe outdoor gardens. What are those outdoor gardens? Provide some trees, so that there's some shade out here. I mean, everybody's under the tent here. Why are you under the tent? Because there's no trees. If we had some trees here, you'd be under the trees.
How far out?
About where the shadow line is here. We don't want to get any farther because of classrooms on both sides. You can see the window units. All the window units will be eliminated as part of this project.
When you build out like that, do you leave the windows like?
Yeah, those windows will remain. Yep. And the proposed addition, classroom addition, is just beyond the wall here. The original design had it aligning with this, and the revised design actually has it set back to create more outdoor space for recess on this side.
Paul, wasn't one of your concerns the sight lines from here to that
Yeah,
playground?
the pushback gives us more playground space, and then that we can see
Everything
makes a
helps.
big
Everything
difference.
helps. So we're now in Henley. The Henley main office is directly off of the main lobby here. The reception desk or the security desk is in the lobby space here. So if the question would be for the committee and group as to whether or not that should remain as part of the lobby space, or whether that function should actually be moved into the main office and perhaps having a transaction window in the vestibule. You can see what the finishes are, similar to the other schools that we visited. The finishes here, you have VCT on the floor, and you have just a throw-down walk-off mat. So the question is really, do you want to look at what was just done at Oxford in terms of putting porcelain tile and having a built-in walk-off mat, both in the vestibule, and the vestibule actually does have a built-in walk-off mat today. So it was upgraded when the renovation happened several years ago.
think it's interesting to note that the three schools use it differently as best we know. So Hinley has a waiting room, Royal has Lost and Found, and I'm not sure what they do at home. I don't think there's anything really in the best.
Don't have any space for it. So, it's just an important discussion as we go through this. This is your front door, this first impression of the school. What can we want? How do we want that visitor's first impression to be of the school? You've done a really nice job at Oxbridge, and let's look at potentially upgrading the finishes and how we address the different issues in here.
As we talked about the community and how the community accesses the building, also I think it's worth thinking about how the rooms are used and furnished.
Are these classrooms now?
So
This is the main office, and that's the nurse's office and a conference room.
So originally, these were kindergarten classrooms.
Yep.
And so this kindergarten classroom over here is turned into the main office. You have a conference room here and the nurse's suite. So for a parent picking up a sick child, obviously the nurse's suite right here is a great location. Having a conference room right here is also a great location. These doors right here during the day can be closed off. A vendor can come in, principal, assistant principal, whoever, can meet with somebody and just go right into the conference room right there. So they don't have to access the rest of the building. So there's a lot of functions. When this was reconceived several years ago, a lot of this thought process happened, and these were put in the right location for where the main entrance was. Because if you recall, originally the main entrance was down the hall, it was in the middle of the building, and so the main office and those functions didn't relocate when the front door was relocated here at first. And so there was a discussion in the mid-2015s or wherever it was that we would relocate those functions.
These doors are closed all day, and they are opened by a button on the campus monitor's desk or by swipe badge, just so that people know that, because I know right now they're propped open because of the camp. But on a regular day, these are closed and have to be opened with a security button.
So that's just it's a smart plan. Smart way to do it. Down the hallway?
Morning, Craig.
Hi there. How are you? Nice to see you. How's your morning? Good. Good.
Yeah, this is.
You want to go in one of the
Let's wait out here first because we want to talk about the hallway.
No, you need a buddy.
So looking at the floor finishes, we have a VCT vinyl floor tile on the floors. Our walls are concrete block, painted block, so it's a good solid surface. Our ceilings are a little bit low here, most likely because there's a lot of mechanical up in the ceilings. Similar to the other two schools in the hallways, we're going to be taking these ceilings and lighting down, doing the mechanical work up there, and then put ceilings back up in place. We'll most likely look in this hallway, for example, is if there's an opportunity to elevate the ceiling a little bit because it's a little on the low side. If you look into a typical classroom, I don't want to walk in there because there's classes going on. Well, maybe this room's okay.
Nobody's in there.
And the toilets are right across the
A little bit down the hallway.
So this is a typical kindergarten classroom. There's 4 of them that are all right next to each other. And if you look right out the window here, there's a good view because here's where the kindergarten playground is. So this is a great location for a playground. It's adjacent to the classrooms. Today, to get to that playground, you need to go out the front door. The proposal here is actually to create a new corridor and a direct access to this playground so that you have a secure playground and a direct access from the classrooms to that playground, which will just help in terms of the circulation for our youngest kids here at Henley. Ceilings.
We talked about the layout of the playground. I think at Henley it's important to note that you have that total view even with both ages. Either of you can pick up for me, but we talked about it I think at Royal or Holmes. And the Henley playground's really well laid out, I think, versus some of our others where the playgrounds you don't have visibility on both.
Yeah, so all the playgrounds at Henley are all on the same side of the building. There is a fence between the drive lane and where the playground is, so that there's separation there. and there's direct access in several locations on the east side of the building to get out to the playgrounds. And so we want to maintain that so that the different age groups don't have to all use the same door to get out. Because there's different age group playgrounds as well. And so part of the overall discussion will be, when we get to the outside of the buildings and planning, is do we have the appropriate playgrounds or in the right locations? Do we need, if we're putting additions where existing space is, outdoor spaces, is how are we relocating or what are we doing with that area? There's a basketball court, for example, here, which the proposed addition may infringe on where the basketball court is. Are we going to relocate that or are we going to modify it? So as we get deeper into this, we'll have those discussions. But anyway, this room is again in pretty good shape. The floors are in great shape. There's good ceilings and lighting here. This might be an opportunity, if these ceilings already have LED fixtures in, this is a classroom that you might do nothing to, for example. Or there may be a sink and cabinets, for example, in this classroom that are worn out, and we should be looking at features like that as opposed to ceilings and lights. So there's a bunch of kids coming back.
Okay.
Let's go. Being kicked out.
Hi, where are you, bud? We're touring the buildings because we're going to do some renovations in about a year. So we're looking at renovations.
My school.
Our girls, how are you? It's famous.
Grab your lunch.
During the time, it's like very, very hot when it's. I actually don't know.
How are you doing? Good.
It's having a complete blowout.
Yeah, those lights are the same. Jim was going.
What's that?
Those lights are the same.
The same, right.
You're dragging along, right?
Here we go. We're staying on target.
Are you getting your friends?
Jill and Chris?
Yep.
Okay, so this is the original 1950s corridor, and you can see the exposed piping similar to what we saw in Royal. That's the sprinkler head piping on both sides. You can see some of the sprinkler heads that are exposed here. You can see some ceiling tiles that are stained. Again, planning to take down all the ceilings and lighting in the hallways and be replaced. It's, in this case, whether or not we're going to be relocating sprinkler head piping or perhaps encapsulating it in soffits and then continuing to maintain the height in here, because you can see we're on a step here. This building has 2 ramps, currently 3 different levels. And this level right here is actually almost 2.5 feet higher than the 1990s edition that's at the far end. So when we're looking at the addition and connecting from 2 different points, we're connecting at 2 different elevations as well. You can also see in the hallways here, there were originally some what we refer to as clear story windows or high windows in the hallways. Most of those have been painted over. Probably painted over at the time that you put the sprinkler pipes in. So again,
Because of the sprinkler pipes?
probably because of the sprinkler pipes. Here's an example where it wasn't painted over, but you're not really receiving any natural light. The purpose of those was to bring natural light into the hallway here, this borrowed light. You're not really receiving any of that. So there's not a whole lot of function to these windows. So if we're boxing out the piping, we can really probably eliminate the windows at the same time.
So is there no function because they're painted, or there's no function because because they don't, just the way they're located, they wouldn't work?
It's sort of the way that they did it at this school is sort of strange. Where we've seen this be pretty functional is when you have a continuous band of windows up there that really can bring a lot of borrowed natural light from the classroom into the hallways. And here with these just little windows every once in a while, you don't create a whole lot of light in here. And so you're really dependent on the artificial light in these hallways. If you turn the artificial light off, these hallways would be dark. In some cases, in some schools where you have this, when you turn these lights off, there's enough borrowed light here that it maintains a certain level of ambience, which isn't the case here. I'd like to go into one of these classrooms.
That's a special ed room, that's an office, so that's not our true.
Do you have any that have the high ceilings, or is it just
I think,
upstairs?
let's see if one of these does. Maybe one down there on the left, although this is the library, you probably want to take them there.
You want to stop here.
Do you want to do that?
I'm not going to go in the library.
Okay, it's not, no one's in there.
So the existing library, which was built in the 1970s, is planning to be demolished as part of this project and replaced. The existing library is about 2,800 square feet, so it's a little bit larger than homes, but it's smaller than our ed specs, which is again calling for over 3,000, 3,300. You see in here, you have sprinkler head pipes, you have a drop ceiling here. Most likely there's ductwork up in there. That ductwork probably is facilitating the library. So our goal here is to restore the original entrance, not use it as the main entrance, but use it at the beginning and end of the school day so that potentially students coming off the buses can come directly in and directly back out to the bus from this point, as well as obviously from the existing main entrance.
And for a history lesson, I think perhaps we can retain the phone booth.
I'm glad it still says phone. Is there a phone? No. Somebody should put their cell phone on.
Yeah, exactly.
By the way, this is also the location where we're proposing to cut through this wall and have access to the new addition. So it's right at the intersection between where the original entrance was and this main hallway.
This is where you were talking about creating some natural light for this hallway by aligning this entrance with that one.
So you'll be able to see directly outside here, as well as you look in this direction, directly outside to the playground at the far end. And you'll also be looking to the right where that courtyard is. So a lot of natural light will be going into that hallway, so as you're looking down there, the hallway will be illuminated. So we'd like to look at a couple of the classrooms. We saw a kindergarten classroom, but some of these classrooms have very high ceilings.
The second one on the left is free right now. I think there might be some staff in there from the last We just have some adults looking at the building. We're just going to step in for just a minute.
Oh. The whole audience in the hallway.
Oh,
yeah.
sorry. We're sisters.
So, if you hear the fighting, it's usually about something at home.
No worries. Is this a good example of the, is this what you were talking about for high? Okay.
Well, I think upstairs, I think you have pendant fixtures, so we might go upstairs.
Sure.
All right, so this is one of the original classrooms. It's plus or minus 620 square feet, so it's smaller than what our goal is of 800 square feet. You can see that the floors are still in good condition. The walls are generally in good condition with some markings. And in this case, the ceilings and lighting would be taken down and replaced, making sure that they're LED. You can see there's staining on some of the tiles here. And once we get the air conditioning, we won't need to have the ceiling fans. On the exterior perimeter, you can see these heating units. These will be removed and replaced, but once again, similar to the other two schools, there's no casework or anything on this wall, so that when we're removing and replacing, there isn't anything else that's truly being affected by this. And the window unit will be eliminated because the new system has air conditioning. I was actually looking for a classroom. I think we want to go upstairs because definitely at Royal, and I remember a couple classrooms here where you can see the plaster ceilings along the perimeter, that there's actually pendant light fixtures that are hanging down, and they're fluorescent fixtures. I believe that the classroom's upstairs. But first, let's go down to the 1990s wing and just look at a typical classroom there, and then we can go upstairs, and then we'll go outside. Thank you.
Thank you.
Sorry. Oh my God. I was just thinking about that.
No more kids now. Now all the rooms are just, well, they're being cleaned, so we'll see messy.
So you feel that you're going downhill?
A little bit.
Yeah.
My friend doesn't know where.
He does.
Water here, just be careful.
All right. So if you recall Ox Ridge at the beginning, and we saw a couple of resource rooms that were off of the hallway, and they were glass. One of the concepts here is, because this floor right here will be the first and second grade house, is to create first and second grade house resource center in the middle. And so directly here, that this wall would be taken down, pushed out, have some space out here that students could gather, as well as resource rooms that were glazed in, so that as you're coming down this hallway, you're looking out at the resource center for the first and second graders. Let's go to the official class.
Either one is, whatever one they're not in.
Okay.
Yeah. Thank you.
Sure. Yeah, I think that might be a good one.
This one's being cleaned right now.
Right. This is one of our second grades.
Yes.
Is Jill still with us?
Yeah, she's coming. She's here.
Okay. So a typical classroom, second grade classroom, floors are in good condition. The school maintains them very well. The walls are block in this case, so they're all durable. You can see the ceilings and lighting. Here actually in the ceilings you can see a little bit of sag. And again, I think that's partly our conversation about utilizing 2x2 versus 2x4. The smaller tiles tend not to sag. This could have happened a long time ago without any air conditioning. If the building is conditioned correctly, it shouldn't make a difference. But when we didn't have air conditioning in here, and then probably the humidity level gets to the point where there's moisture in the air that starts to get into some of the finishes. I think, again, if you look at the other finishes in the room, the casework's in good condition, the sink is in good condition here. So we're going to be looking on a case-by-case basis and greater level of detail. But in general, most of these classrooms in the 90s wings are in pretty good shape. It's really mostly a ceiling and lighting project. So I'd like to find one of those old 19...
Yeah. How are you doing?
Good, how are you?
We can walk all in the hallways upstairs, right?
And so if you look out here, you can look out and see that there's a ramp down, there's pavement out there. This addition extends out in this direction by the width of the corridor, which is approximately 10 feet, and then the depth of the classroom, which is an additional about 32 to 34 feet. So we're looking at the next 40 to 45 feet of space out here would be classroom space. And that's down the length of the entire wing here. And so this stair remains. We're going to be looking at egress because This is an exit corridor to the outside. When we put the hallway here, we may look at adding a set of doors on this side and or that side to provide the appropriate egress so that kids coming from the second floor have a direct access to the outside, and that we're doing that perfect. Upstairs?
Come on up this way.
So this is a typical classroom here at Hindley, and also Royal is a similar scenario in the 1950s when you can see we have very high ceilings, high windows. The acoustics in this room are a direct adhered 1x1 tile to the ceiling above. In a couple cases, those tiles have been removed for whatever purpose, and that I believe that these might have been relamped, but I would expect that these are fluorescent light fixtures that are been there for quite a number of years. You can see the sprinkler piping along the corridor wall there that shoots out. That if we drop the ceiling in here, we would need to extend the sprinkler piping, and then we could do a different type of lighting. We could either come back in here with pendant fixtures, or we could come in with 2x2 lighted fixtures similar to what you see in most of the classrooms here.
Do the windows go up to the ceiling in all of these classrooms like that?
Yes. So similar to what you saw downstairs, where right at the window edge, there's a pocket, and you can, in most of those classrooms, you can see the plaster up there, and then it comes out a foot or two, and then it steps down. It steps down whatever you need to accommodate the piping and the conduit above, and then it will come straight across. So you're still realizing the full window. So you set the piping.
So what is generally the preference from an acoustical lighting and hiding the piping? You know, is it generally to have the drop ceiling, or is it to have it up high with the...
Well, I mean, this is tremendously high. You're still going to have a very high ceiling. If you looked at in those other classrooms where they're dropped,
They're kind of low.
Well, it depends. In a room like this, you're only dropping the ceiling 8 inches or something like that. So I'm trying to figure if that's a 7-foot door. You're at a 12-foot ceiling in here. So you would still have an 11-foot ceiling in this room, which is, most of your classrooms that were downstairs, probably 9 foot, maybe 9'6". And so the ceiling here is still much higher than what your typical is. And that's where you want to look at whether you want to drop put a 2x2 fixture within the grid, or whether you want to go back with pendants and pull that light fixture down. You also want to look at the direction of the light fixture. So in this case, it's perpendicular to the exterior window. In a lot of cases, what we're looking at when we're doing dual switching, light switching in the classroom, is actually turning the fixtures the other direction. Instead of having 3, there might be just 2 rows in this direction, and so that you can operate those switches independently. You're getting a lot of light here from next to your window. It may be that you only want to turn on the light fixture over there and leave this one off. It's all about energy efficiency. In this room right now, we could teach just like this, and it's perfectly comfortable. In our office, we often just don't turn the lights on, so we have a lot of natural light that's coming in. We have a tremendous amount of natural light that's coming in. It's all, ultimately, it's about energy efficiency, and how we can see. You have a project right now, the Photovoltaic Project, that's on the roofs, partial roofs here. It's a significant system that's on Ox Ridge. The systems that are on these 3 buildings are smaller, but there's additional opportunity, whether it's on the additions or on the roofs that have not been replaced at this point, to replace those roofs into additional, again, to reduce your energy consumption. So it's not just about capital costs, but it's about operating costs as well, and reducing our operating costs. He wants me to look at the camera, and I refuse to. Okay, I think we're done inside. I think if we want to go back out that steam staircase, then we can see where we're proposing the addition. and look at the existing conditions that are out there, and then we'll just walk back to the parking lot. One thing you may want to look at when we're right here, so that we don't have to walk around, this is the library. This is the portion of the building that's planned to be taken down and restore the original entrance. And part of that exercise will also be a landscape exercise to create an outdoor plaza so that when kids are waiting for the bus or waiting for their parents to pick them up, that there's a nice place out there, that there's some shade trees, there's some seating elements, whether it's stone walls or some sort of furniture element out there so that kids have a place to hang out. Okay, let's go outside. Here you can see those windows from the outside.
I think Saturday or Sunday is supposed to be on.
There they are.
All right, right there.
All right, so we're currently standing in the proposed courtyard. And this set of doors here would be one of the egresses from the courtyard. That set of doors there needs to be maintained as an egress from the building directly to the outside. So the planned addition is within the 4 windows on this side of that doorway. That opening is somewhere in those 4 windows in the addition. These 3 modules get demolished at the beginning of this project. The plan is to take these programs and move them into the existing building where we currently have the special ed programs. So there's 2 special ed rooms that are there in the corner, and there's also one down here. So we're just going to need to talk about how these programs can be relocated in the building.
It'll probably be just putting some teachers on a cart, like world language, would travel from class to class rather than have a space, something like that.
So we're not quite there, but
right.
We're getting really close, and we're going to have plans that show the existing conditions of the building and where all the programming is today.
Yes.
And we're going to want you to confirm that.
Yeah.
As well as the other principles.
Moved. Yeah.
And because things move or shift around. Sure. And then during construction, how we're accommodating that whole program, including the offices and resource space, etc. And then post-construction. And there might be 2 phases of during construction where people need to move around a bit. But those are the plans that we're going to be using. We're sitting down probably the next few weeks.
Sure.
To understand, make sure that we know how it's used today, and that we're going to be accommodating this or if we're not, how to.
Yeah.
And so there might be a little bit of back and forth.
Yes.
And there might be a little bit of need to condense during construction.
Sure.
And then so that when we're done, we're able to do it construction efficiently.
Yeah.
Just looking here, you can see the grade is falling away right here. So this elevation right here is it's fairly similar to the elevation inside the building. But you can see the rest of this steps down, and actually then it goes back up. So as we're playing with where this building sits on the site, we're also going to be moving a bunch of earth around. And this was an opportunity when we talked about this enclosed courtyard, potentially having this step down, because you can see that the existing conditions step down, pitch down. Questions out here? I think we should look at this corner over here because there's a lot of utility. You can also see there was a very nice adaptation here because there's water that was being directed in this direction and it was getting into the lower level mechanical space. And so as we're looking at this project, we're looking at drainage on site, the stormwater that's created from the roof and from the parking lot, as you recall, is piped on the other side, probably directly underneath where some of these modulars are, to the back corner of the building, and then it continues down off of our property. This is all planned, that piping is planned to be relocated, and there's a plan to address stormwater on our campus before it leaves this campus, and that would happen on the east side of the campus. Is that, that's east? Is that south? South. On the south side of it. So, for example, this area right here, there are some water inlets. We're going to be addressing all stormwater in here so that we're pulling water away from the building, getting it into appropriate drainage pipes, and passing it around the building. Modulars is probably between these.
They're saying it doesn't work well anyways.
And it'll be in the way of the. So this is a great place to stand because it's under cover, but you can also see all the different playgrounds. So you have the kindergarten playground there, and you have the playground for the older kids, and obviously all the play fields here. And this is all planned to be maintained in the future. Where you see this modular right here, that's the Learning Commons library in the future. And so it's in a nice location. It has great views looking out here. And then the world language, art and music suites are also looking out towards the playground and the tree that's back here.
So part of why we're looking at the drainage, there's a couple of reasons. One, the location relative to where we're working, and then you talked also about the modification there, but Alan was just reminding me that we got 6 feet of water in that basement last year during all those floods. So looking at drainage on this
Closed
side.
school and stuff because of it.
Yeah. So drainage is a major thing on this campus and on this campus. So we definitely want to address it as part of this project. And so this is a great opportunity to do that. So just on the other side of this is the gym right here. Just on the other side, you see there's a nook. To the right of that nook is where the kindergarten classrooms are. That's where we're planning to have a new opening and canopy, and that will be the door from the kindergarten wing out to the playground. Where you see the 4-foot fence here between the playground and the parking lot or the drive aisle. It's open between the end of the fence and the building. We're proposing actually to extend that and have a gate so that it can open so maintenance vehicles can come through, but otherwise it's a contained area. Well, thank you all for being part of the tour. Really appreciate it.
Thank you.
I hope it was informative.
Bravo.
Yeah, 3-hour
12.
tour.
All right, well done. Well done.
Great. Thank you everybody for giving up your time
Military
today.
training.
Much
Thank you.
appreciated.